Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paul Talks Track. Today's video, we're going to be looking at hammer and javelin across the world and how they've been kind of shaping out so far. You guys have seen each of my last two videos, first looking at shot put and then looking at discus. You guys kind of get the gist for how this video is going to work out. So let's keep the introduction short and sweet and get right into it. Kicking things off with the men's hammer throw. Really, there's only one. I'm going to talk about other guys, but really, there's only one man you need to talk about so far this year, and that is reigning world champion from Canada, Ethan Katzberg. Because, obviously him winning the world title last year, massive PB, like 81 mid, I think it was, is insane. It was ridiculous. It was really cool to see, especially with how young he is. But what he's done to start 2024 is just not fair. He opened his season at the Kipkeino Classic in Kenya and threw 84.38, which placed him ninth on the all-time list. And it was the farthest throw in like a decade, I think. That was pretty impressive. I wonder how he backed that up. Well, he's gone 81.98, and in that series he had three other throws over 80 meters. And he threw 80-10 as well just a couple days ago. And the two other meets that he didn't hit 80 were like 79-70 and like 79-90. So he has just been absolutely like tearing the world apart. It's been incredible to just look at Twitter and then look at the results page every time he competes, because it feels like he's doing something just even more impressive and insane than the last time he was out there. And he has like a 3-meter world lead right now. Like, there is no way, barring injury, which I don't even want to say that because I don't want to jinx anything, but there's no way he's not going to be the heavy favorite in terms of heading to Paris. There is another man this year that has also broken the 80-meter barrier twice. Mikhailo Kokon of Ukraine has thrown 80-76 and 80-33. Kokon is, pretty kind of well-renowned for how insane his youth and junior careers were. He has the U18 world record at 87 meters, which does not feel real. And he has the European U20 record. He was the world U18 champion, U20 world silver medalist. And then he, on the senior levels, he took fourth in Tokyo at 20 years old, throwing over 80 meters. He's definitely, obviously, one of the best in the world. Like I said, him and Katzberg are the only two men to break 80 twice this year. They're two of only three men that have broken 80 this year. And Kokon has been three times in the top 8 at World Championships. Like I said, he got fourth in Tokyo, and he took fifth. I didn't even realize this until I was like looking up stuff for this video. He took fifth at the World Championships in Doha in 2019 when he was 18 years old, which is insane. I mean, it makes sense given how like ridiculous his youth career was, his U18 career, but still, that feels absurd. Prior to this year, Kokon's had cleared 80 meters twice. Both of them were in 2021. One of them was in Tokyo. Then another one was at a meet, I think, just after Tokyo. And so the fact that he's now doubled the amount of career 80-meter clearances he has, at least at the senior level, this early on in the season, it's a very good sign of things to come for him moving into his second Olympics already at only 23 years old. Looking at the rest of the world right now in the men's hammer, it's really good and really deep. There's 9 guys over 79 already this year. And there are actually 4 guys over 80 meters, but one of them is Russian and one of them is Belarusian, so they are not going to be factoring in at Paris because they have been banned. So, like I said, there's been a ton of really good guys this year, but Katzberg and Kokon are really the only two that have kind of stood out from the pack and really kind of elevated themselves to kind of another level, so to speak. On the women's side, it's kind of the big 4, I guess you could call them, and it's kind of the same group of women that it has been for the last couple world championships, and that's Brooke Anderson, Deanna Price, and Janae Casnavoid of the U.S., and then Cameron Rogers of Canada. They're currently the top 4 in the world, and they've all just been throwing really well this year. Brooke, I think it was her opener. She threw 79.92. which is the 10th best mark in history. It's her second best mark ever. So that was a really good start. She hasn't necessarily come really like close to that, I don't believe, in the last couple meets, but she's been winning pretty consistently up until pre, which Cameron Rogers won in Diamond League record fashion at 77-76, which was a new season best for her. But yeah, it's just kind of the same thing. Like I said, we've seen the last couple years. It's going to be these four women probably just battling it out head to head up until Paris. And then we'll see what happens in Paris, and we'll see who finds their way onto the podium. We'll see if Brooke Anderson randomly goes out in qualifying again. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I wouldn't expect it to happen because she's too good for that. And then, so like I said, right now, Brooke and Cameron are 1 and 2. And then Deanna Price is third with a season best of 77-16 on the world list right now. And then Cass in the Void is fourth at 75-99. Moving on to the final event, let's talk about men's javelin. Your world leader right now, as he has been since February, is Max Denning of Germany. In February, he threw 90 meters 20 at 19 years old. With that throw, Denning became the youngest man in history to break the 90-meter barrier. But he's competed 5 times since then, and his best mark in those 5 competitions is 81.78. So, like I said, he's still really young. He's still 19. He doesn't turn 20 until the end of September. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time before we see him build some consistency. He has the Olympic standard, though. He's the world leader right now over 90 meters. So he probably is going to be in Paris. And if he can kind of capture lightning in a bottle like he did in February when he hit that 90-20, anything is possible. But I'd say right now he's more of like a wild card than than a medal favorite like you would usually expect the world leader at this point in the year to be. Speaking of medal favorites for Paris, it's probably going to be the 3 guys that have been the 3 best and most consistent javelin throwers over the last 2.5 years now. It's just unfortunately Julian Weber always gets left off the podium. But that's going to be Jakub Vadlich of Czechia, Neeraj Chopra of India, and Julian Weber of Germany. And right now, their season's best sit at. Jakub Vadlich is at 88.38. Weber just opened up a couple days ago at 88.37. And Neeraj Chopra is at 88.36. So those 3 are quite literally as close as they could possibly be. And honestly, that just feels right. That feels kind of like where they should be at. We haven't seen a ton of javelin competitions. The early Diamond League meets have been pretty heavy discus and shot put. So I think only one of them had women's jav, and then one of them had men's jav. And in that men's jav, Vadlich beat Chopra by the 2 centimeters that separate their season best right now. Like I said, Weber wasn't there. He just opened up a day or 2 ago. So yeah, it feels like those 3 all very strong starts to their season, 88 plus. And it feels like they'll probably be the podium favorites headed to Paris, as usual. Anderson Peters, the 2022 world champ from Eugene, he opened his season really well. He threw 86.62, which was better than any throw he had last year by over a meter, I want to say. So it's a really, really strong start for him. And it could be a nice little bounce back season moving towards the Olympics. And the last guy that I want to talk about is someone that I talked about a lot in my season preview video, and that is, of course, Johannes Vetter of Germany. And he has yet to open, but from everything he's been posting on social media, it seems like things are going pretty well. He was throwing some heavier jabs really well a couple months ago. It looks like he's been in the weight room and hitting some pretty good marks by his standards, which are insane for a javelin thrower. Yeah, we're kind of just waiting on him to open. I think he might have been entered in a meet a week or 2 ago and pulled out, but I'm not entirely sure on that. So it's kind of just wait and see with him and see if he seems to be in pretty good shape, but we'll see if that shape translates to, the shape he was in 2019 and 2021, where he was just tearing up the record books. I hope it is. I sincerely hope it is, because that would be awesome to see a guy throw well over 90 meters again. And B, it would also make me look pretty smart because I spent so much time talking about him in my season preview. I mean, really, to sum this point about Vetter up is just the sport is better when Johannes Vetter is consistently throwing his 800-gram spear well over like 310 feet on a relatively consistent basis. And finally, we are at women's javelin, and we're going to start with last year's World Championship silver medalist Flor Denise Ruiz Hurtado of Colombia. She's the world leader right now at 66.70. She threw that a couple weeks ago. It was a PB, South American record, all the good stuff. Phenomenal throw from her. She's had a really strong start to the season. She did lose in a competition a week and a half or so ago to reigning world champion Haruka Kitaguchi of Japan, who also beat her, in Budapest last year. But all things considered, really strong start. Anytime you can have a PB this early on in the season when your PB was already as good as Ruiz Hurtado's was, it's a great start. Victoria Hudson of Austria is currently second on the world list this year. She threw a new PB last weekend of 66.06, which it was like a meter and a half PB for her. Absolutely massive throw. And it's just kind of building on this sort of breakout she had last year, where it wasn't necessarily a breakout by distance, but in her first three major championships, she had placed I think her best placement was like 20th or something. And then she placed fifth last year in Budapest. And now she's hit a massive PB. She's currently second in the world this year. And javelin right now feels like there are just so many women. And it's really hard for no one's really like pulled away from the pack the same way we've seen in some of the other throwing events. So it really feels like every single spot on that podium is going to be wide open by the time Paris comes around. A little bit more on Haruka Kitaguchi, whom I had mentioned earlier. Her season's best right now is 63.45, which is seventh on the world list. And she's just been really consistent. She's at 62.97, won her Diamond League competition in China. She threw her 63.45, like I said, about a week and a half ago to beat Flor Denise Ruiz Hurtado head to head in Japan. So she hasn't thrown a ton, but when she has thrown, it's been pretty good. Not necessarily, the 67 plus we saw her at the end of last year, but obviously I would not be surprised at all if she does get there by the time Paris rolls around, even some more of the upcoming Diamond League meets before we get to Paris. If you guys can take a second and, think back to my season preview for the women's side, kind of like on the men's side where I talked at length about Johannes Vetter and hopefully his return, I also talked about Maria Andrzejczyk of Poland, who was the silver medalist in Tokyo, and her opener in 2021 placed her third on the all-time list. It was like 71 plus, absolutely massive. And then she's been dealing with just a ton of injuries and some other issues the last 2 years. And so her best mark she's competed like 8 times in 2022 and 2023, and her best mark was like 58 something. Well, so far, her 2024 season's gotten off to a really good start. She's either 10th or 11th in the world right now. I think she was originally 10th, but then when Hudson threw her 66.06, she might be bumped down to 11th. But, I mean, she's thrown 62 plus 3 straight meets, which, looking at the last 2 years for her, is phenomenal. And we know that her high end it's better than any active thrower. Let's just say that. But even if she can just get into like that 64 to 66 meter range on a pretty consistent basis, with what we've seen the last couple of years, that should be enough to at least get her into medal contention in Paris, maybe even back on the podium, like I said, after her silver in Tokyo. The final athlete that I'm going to talk about in this entire series of videos, very fittingly, I believe, is Yan Ziyi of China, who a couple days ago, on May 22nd, turned 16 years old. About a month before that, she broke the U20 javelin world record. So she was 15 and broke a U20 world record. She threw 64.28, which places her third on the world list right now. And just, obviously just saying, a 15-year-old broke a U20 world record. That sounds insane. But out of all of the current standing world U20 records, the youngest at the time of setting that world record was Yan Ziyi it was like 15 months and then a hair under 11 months, like 10 months and 25 days or something. The next closest is Biniam Mahari of Ethiopia, who set the indoor 5K record on the men's side this year, in 2024, and he was like 17 and a month. So she is over a year younger than the second youngest U20 record holder at the time of setting that current world record. So that's just insane. But the sad thing is I talked about this rule a little bit when I was talking about Julia Tunks on the women's discus, is that World Athletics doesn't allow U18 throwers in the Olympics. So despite the fact that she is currently comfortably third on the world list, despite the fact that she could have a very solid chance at getting a medal, and it's not necessarily like a Max Denning situation where she had a really good early season throw and that hasn't quite been able to match that. She's had 61-31 is her worst mark across her last 5 meets. So she has that high end that we have never seen anything close to at her age before. But then she also has a pretty solid level of consistency that would place her among some of the best throwers in the world. And so, like I said, she's third on the world list right now, and she's not going to be in Paris because she is 2 years too young. It's just think about that for a second and try to not let your brain explode. Like, I've tried finding why World Athletics has that rule implemented, because it's only implemented for throwing events. You could be a jumper or a runner and be 16 or 17 and compete in the Olympics. I don't know why it's specifically implemented for throwing events. If anyone does know, please drop that in the comments because I would be very interested to find out why. But it just feels a little silly in this situation where you have someone that could legitimately be a medal contender on the senior level can't compete just because they are too young. So it's unfortunate, but it's still just really cool just to watch what she's been able to do. I don't know if that same rule applies to the World Championships. So I don't know if she'd be able to compete next year when she's 17. But I suppose we'll find out. That's another thing. Like, I tried finding anything on World Athletics website about this rule and really could not find anything. So if anyone would know the answer to either one of those questions about why that rule is implemented and if it applies to both World Championships and Olympics or just Olympics, please drop those down in the comment section because I need to be educated. All right, well, that is all for Hammer and Javelin, and that is all for this series of throwing videos. I really thought I was going to find a way to fit all 4 events, both men's and women's, into like a 20-minute video. And this is going to end up being 3 20-minute videos. So, I'm glad about that because I'm giving these throwers the respect they deserve and the respect that they so rarely get. But also, I am making a lot more work for myself, but it's okay because this is fun. And I love talking about throwing, and I love having the chance and the opportunity to talk about throwing. I'm not entirely sure what my next couple videos are going to be. I'm still trying to kind of figure out what kind of content I want to be on this channel now that it is, solely track and I'm not doing hockey and football and whatnot. So if you guys have any ideas or anything you would like to see, please leave those down in the comment section. I'm probably going to be, like I said, we have Olympic trials coming up in about 3 weeks for the U.S., so I'll probably be doing some videos about that. I'm also, going to the national championships, the NCAA national championships in Eugene next week. So there'll definitely be some sort of video about that. Maybe if I can figure out how to do it and not make it terrible, maybe like a vlog type thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's an Olympic year. There's NCAA championships. There's Olympic trials. There's Diamond League meets. It's going to be a very busy summer. So I'll definitely find something to talk about. With all that being said, that's all for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please follow the Instagram at Paul Talks Track and my Twitter at PHoffMahoney. And I will see you guys next time.